LP 102.9 Franklin Public Radio. And worldwide, anywhere, anytime at WFPR.FM. So glad you could join us.
There's just so many little things that we do in the shadows of public health to keep people safe. And I think that that's super important, but I don't want us to kind of slink back to where we were, where no one actually has any idea what we do, except
Steve Sherlock here for Franklin Matters, Franklin Public Radio, anywhere on the internet at WFPR.FM and in the local Franklin, Mass area dial on the FM dial at 102.9. Here today, we have our health director, Kathleen Liberty. Kathy, how are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you, Steve?
It's good to be well. I am well as well, especially when we're talking about health. I mean, it's appropriate.
It is appropriate.
It's still challenging times. COVID is still around. It hasn't fully gone yet, but I think with what we're going to talk about today, your department is also kind of transitioning from kind of the heavy pandemic period into new normal, whatever that's going to be.
Whatever that's going to be. Yeah. It's well, and it's been very interesting because we have shared service grant now with Rentham in Norfolk. Yeah, the public service grant from the DPH allowed us to get hire a regional health inspector. And that what that inspector does is he does food establishment inspections twice a year. And also we receive housing complaints or nuisance complaints.
Sure.
And so he'll oversee those complaints and do inspections as needed. So he's a great fit. He's a great person, and we're happy to have him on board. And then
Call the June 28th meeting of the Finance Committee to order. First order of business tonight, I don't have the thing in front of me, is the election of officers for the Finance Committee. I'll be happy to entertain nominations for chair.
I would like to nominate George Conley.
Second.
Okay, anyone else? All those in favor, it has to be a roll call vote?
Has to be a roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
What was your last name again? Sorry.
Coke.
Coke?
Coke.
Mm-hmm. First name? Stephanie Coke? Yeah. Correct. Are you good with? Why don't we start with me? Nicole is I. You can't put yourself, George?
Yes, he can.
He can?
Yeah.
Yes.
Natalie.
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
I.
And Chana.
And Chana.
Chana?
Yes.
And I'll accept nominations for vice chair, and I would nominate Natalie.
Second.
Stephanie?
Any other nominations? All those in favor? Oh, no. Roll call vote.
Stephanie? I. Nicole is I. George?
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Chana?
Yes.
And finally, nominations for secretary.
I would nominate Nicole Corbisiero. Did I say it right?
Good.
Second.
Anyone else? No, seeing none. Roll call vote.
Aye.
Nicole is I. George?
Aye.
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And Chana?
Yes.
Okay, my favorite part of the meeting. Is there anyone here with public comment? I think there has been one person and she left before we got to comments. In 10 years?
I've been here 7, so.
Someday.
Okay, now, town administrator's fiscal forecast. Mr. Hanlon.
Sure. So through you, Mr. Chairman, to the committee, I added this in there as this is our first meeting, I believe, since June. I finally got to it after 3 years of pandemic and ebbs and flows in the economic world to put together a fiscal forecast. There'll be one that'll certainly come out later this year with a little bit more detail looking forward, but I just wanted to give the committee an opportunity to, if they had any questions, to just, that would be a great time if folks have any questions about anything that I put in there. I had a balance of positive news, of good quality of life in Franklin, mixed with all the inflation, interest rate, mortgage rate, bad news that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. So, this was put out a little over a month and a half ago. So obviously a few things have changed, like gas prices have gone down a little. They're still well over $1 per gallon, more than it was last fiscal year. So while some of the dynamics are going to change a little bit and maybe are more favorable, I think all of us would likely agree that the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24, 36 months are going to be a choppy ride. So happy to answer any questions.
Jamie, when will we see, just for this current fiscal year, the updated, is it called the control sheet?
Yep.
Because I think last time we looked at it, we hadn't, the collective bargaining wasn't finalized, so I don't know if we've seen it since it kind of finalized and fell through everything.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the updated control, I was just mentioning this to Stephanie offline. So the November meeting, the Finance Committee, if I recall, it's November 9th, I believe, will look at the updated control sheet with the updated state aid numbers. The host community agreements are going to mostly go away. The legislature changed the law, so those host community agreements with the cannabis facilities will be gone. A couple of other adjustments, like the MEC Regional Dispatch Center bill came in. That's a little lower than we thought. So we're going to make all those adjustments. The committee will look at it in, I think, November 9th to make a recommendation to the town council for their November 16th meeting.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
And we will also, just for reference, met with the finance team staff. We meet every Wednesday morning. And we should by mid-October, but probably for that meeting as well, we will have an update on the first quarter local receipts on meals tax, hotel tax, cannabis tax, all that other stuff as well.
I have, anyone else? I have one question. Do we have any anticipated borrowing coming up of any consequence? And if we do, did we build in the current rate structure? Or
Great question.
The good rate structure that we had when we bought fire trucks?
So, yeah, the fire truck days, again, that was a really great move on behalf of the town to get those trucks. We anticipate borrowing, well, number one, to your point and to Natalie's question a moment ago, the borrowing and all the numbers that have been done for this building as well as the Horace Mann drain up at the school, all of those numbers have been identified in actuals, and those will be reflected on the control sheet adjustments in November. So those actuals will be there in terms of the bump up. I do believe, Chris told me earlier today, the cost for debt and interest will go up a couple $100,000, I believe, in this year's budget, so it's not too bad. When we went to borrow for the Maple Hill open space in May, I believe we got a 3.45% interest rate. So that was post the first rate hikes from the Fed Reserve, but that also reflected the first AAA bond rating. We anticipate the potential of one more borrowing, potentially for open space, within the next 60 days. And so we'll get another updated idea of what that interest rate will look like. But suffice to say, the policies that we've implemented to get the AAA bond rating certainly are helping a lot.
When do we go out for the Beaver Street 25 million bucks?
It's not 25 million, George. That's
right.
so
That was
2021.
a long time ago.
That is,
For
yeah.
the 30 million.
It's,
probably.
yeah. Well, I can't help but say it. You know, the 33 million is a joke. in and of itself to some degree. So the application for SRF has been applied for. I just want to note, as the treasurer reminded me today too, it's a 1.5% guaranteed interest rate because it's a state government loan and we get the 0.5% off for being a housing choice community. So the interest rate on the Beaver Street is not our concern. The concern is the labor costs and the supply cost, which right now, you're correct, is a $33 million project, but that was to get the application in. But I would fully expect that the cost of that will be far higher, depending on when we go out to bid for it. We'll know the award from the state in like November, October or November, Carrie? Mm-hmm. October, November? So we'll know, I can't speak ahead of it, but it's a very, very high priority for the state to do this project. And so we anticipate getting approved. And then the big decision is going to be when to go out to bid. And the financing of that is really the next big question that we'll have to entertain.
But that's the big borrowings left, the foreseeable future borrowings, right?
Those are
We're
the
not
two
gonna-
that
we
jump
gotta
off.
police-
Those are the two that jump off, and I've already illustrated and spoke publicly about this, that the additional authorization that happened in 2020 for the Remington Jefferson remodel and the high school, there's the visitor stands, there's some fiber laying, there's some other stuff at the high school. All those projects are completely on hold until we understand where the labor market is, we understand where costs are. And to your point on those projects, not the Beaver Street Interceptor, interest rates are a huge factor with those other projects.
Something came in and has left. Well, the police station is out there too, so.
Police station
Maybe
is
it's
very,
maybe
very
far
far from
out
being
now.
designed, located. I anticipate at the beginning of the next calendar year is when roughly the working group will start, hopefully. I say that hopefully because in my forecast, you can see the Red Brick Schoolhouse bids went up, the SNET Trail, there's a lot of dynamics, and so I'm not really sure exactly, when we're gonna have the staff time to staff that working group to get the police station ready, but I think, George, that's still years away, is my guess.
And the other question I have is on the AAA rating. What would cause it to be back to AA or AA plus? Is there anything we should do to make sure that that doesn't happen, or is there anything we can do to make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, I'll, and certainly if Chris or Carrie have ideas, they're more than welcome to come up. I would say one, managing our department budgets, and making sure we maintain, the service levels within what we've already appropriated. That's always a good practice, just like at home. I think also the policies and reserves were clearly stated as issues that we have a lot of control over. And so, the Community Preservation Act obviously helped. That's not going away. And there were some other dynamics. The two biggest causes for concern that I see are, one, making sure we stick to our financial policies and making sure that we still make investments in reserves, just like the Commonwealth has done. And the second thing I have to say that's probably a big part of it is what the future of development and growth are in Franklin. I don't think any of you would be shocked to hear me say this, but the planning board applications are far fewer than a year ago. The ZBA is slowing down, conservation. You're seeing projects get rejected or criticized or mitigated with significant restrictions. All of that is a sizable culture change in Franklin. And so where the town has been able to continue to make investments in the budget, our revenue source, our main revenue source is property tax revenues. So having healthy property tax revenues is good. But there's only so much you can do out of current ones. There has to be new stuff happening, whether it's private property, commercial property, residential. And I think that the stalling to some degree of growth and development, as well as the citizen viewpoint that put up the gates, let's not let anything else be built, actually then hinders our ability to make investments in our police and fire and schools and DPW to address those issues that people have. So those are the two things that I think we have in our control as a community in these circles to be able to maintain that AAA bond rating. I don't know if there's anything else exterior, or external rather, that Chris or Carrie have in mind, but that would be my few minutes.
Okay, anyone else? No? Thank you, sir. CPA approvals.
So through you, Mr. Chairman, speaking of the fiscal forecast, because we were meeting tonight, we're asking the committee to approve, endorse, support an additional $50,000 from the Community Preservation Act Trust Fund, in which the balance is anticipated to be almost $1 million. We would request $50,000 to be added to the Red Brick Schoolhouse project. I couldn't have timed it better myself because they just started the work 2 days ago. And if you go up there, you should check it out. Alicia and I went up today, actually. They're already done with one half of the building. And I think some people are going to be surprised to see what the real red brick looks like. You can clearly see the difference. And so that project, we only designed in April or March, and it was clearly going to be $200,000. And then when the bids went out in June, they came back for $250,000. So we need the additional $50,000 to complete the project.
A question about CPA. I know it's on the tax bill, et cetera. What was the, I'll call it a take, this year for the, what came in from the real estate tax revenue this year? What was the number? Do we know?
1.35 million?
I was going to say
1.4 million.
And then the state matches something.
They
matches,
do.
but
Our estimation is 400,000. The firm number does not come out until November, I believe. The actual deposit, whatever the letter we get, So.
Anybody else? CPA? No? Moving on to, I lost my stabilization balances.
Need a vote to recommend the additional Red Brick Schoolhouse money.
Oh, I didn't, there was no doc paper for it, so.
Discussion on Red Brick Schoolhouse, just a simple motion to recommend the $50,000.
Yep, sorry, do I have to make a motion?
Yeah.
Motion? I'd like to make a motion to approve the additional funds request for the Red Brick Schoolhouse of $50,000.
Second.
Roll call.
Aye. Nicole, aye. George.
Aye.
Natalie.
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
And Jenna.
Yes.
Do we think that's the end of it? Have we got a hunch that's the end of it?
That's the end of it for this contract because the contract is signed, it's done. And for this phase, which is the external work, the wood, the paint, the brick, the pointing, the doors, the windows, there'll, I'm sure, be an additional project for the interior, but I take them one bite at a time.
Maybe we ought to move the rent to $2 a year or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think it's, I want to say it's $2,000 a year, I think, yeah. 2,500 a year? How much? 24? 2,400. They were the only bidder.
I see. that.
Alicia, who just moved to Boston, right, is like, I'd have anything for that rent. It's like, I'm 2,400 a week.
Stabilization funds.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, I think Natalie, maybe a couple of other members had requested some comparables. So Alicia pulled together with Carrie's help. Thank you, Alicia. If you look at the chart, they put on here the numbers for 2022, the current balances, and then compared that to 2021 and 2020. And as you can see, I think if you look at, to your earlier question, Mr. Chairman, about how to maintain a AAA bond rating, look at the budget stabilization account over 3 years.
And that's, some of that, there's a automatic from free cash, am I wrong?
Yes, there's a minimum deposit we make, that's
And
correct.
then So if it doesn't snow, we put snow on.
That's right,
Okay.
that's right, yep.
Will MEC stabilization cover the cost by then? I don't know what, or come close?
It will not, the current amount will not cover a full year. But that being said, having almost $1 million is probably 70% of what I would anticipate would be a full year in FY '25. So if we make a little bit more inroad on that this year and or next year, then, the town will probably be at 75 to 80%-ish of what a full year would be. And that's pretty close to what we had hoped when we started it. So, all in all, things being considered, I think it's in good shape.
Question, what's the priority for these? When cash is available, how do we decide where it goes?
Yeah. And through you, Mr. Chair, I would say general stabilization and budget stabilization. In addition to the other ones, the fire truck and the recreation, those are normal policies, as you may recall, in the capital plan. But the general stabilization and the budget stabilization, are probably the two biggest priorities. Someday it's, as you know, I call the general stabilization the Dust Bowl account. That doesn't really ever get touched for bond rating purposes. But we do have to maintain it and inch it up to make sure we stay up with the 5% recommendation. And then I would probably argue the budget stabilization would be the next biggest priority. You've seen all states, but Massachusetts in particular, the rainy day fund is, we did the comparables, I think, Natalie, at one other meeting, and clearly we were within striking range of a lot of our comparable towns, but really still pretty low compared to their reserves. And as it was pointed out in the S&P report, that was obviously a big deal.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more question that I ask all the time. At what point does the OPEB money get spent? We're sitting on $10.5 million, which is 10% of our entire budget, or a little less than 10%.
Yeah.
I mean, we keep putting it in. I mean, it's gone from 6.8, around 6.8 to $10.5 million in 3 years. Does it just flow in there forever and never come out?
Yeah, in some ways, I think yes. I will say in all likelihood in my tenure, it's not going to come out just because we still have a lot of liability to save up for. The state put out a report today about healthcare costs. I probably don't need to tell any of you this. It's obviously heading drastically in the wrong direction. And so the cost of that fund probably will go up in terms of the liability. I think the last time we had Dan Sherman in, I think he was looking out 20 or 30 years, if I recall. So, someday when Alicia's retiring, it'll probably pay for my end-of-life care and maybe her health care. Seriously, I'm making a contextual joke, but I'm serious. It's probably 30 years away.
I guess it mystifies me why you have to put millions of dollars away for something that's a regular expense anyway. Mm-hmm. I mean, it isn't like it isn't in our budget. What is it? It was 12 or 13 million bucks this year.
Yeah, it's you have the appropriation in every year. Maybe someday down the line, like we did do with the stormwater utility for that new division, we did bake OPEB into the operating budget. And a lot of towns are doing that when they have new accounts, new utilities, new programs, new departments, and so towns are doing that. We're now baking it into the cost of doing business. But the cost on an annual basis would just eat up money from other stuff if we were to do that in the operating budget. But at some point, that very well could be the case.
Isn't this eating up money from other?
Yeah,
contribution would be-
$750,000 out of operating budget money,
Yeah,
and then 10% of free cash, so about 1.1 million a year, yeah.
so that's eating it up.
Yep.
Okay. All right, my brain's done. Any other questions on stabilization?
I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
How is the stabilization fund invested overall? Is there a percentage that needs to stay in cash, and do we tend to stay over that number, especially in this environment and with inflation the way it is?
So all those stabilization accounts are basically pure cash, and I don't believe they're invested in anything that I'm aware of especially. The one exception to that rule, some of these stabilization funds are literally, by our bylaw or resolution, like the recreation fields is literally a piggy bank. So we deposit in an X amount of dollars each year, and then in 10 years, when the ball fields up at the high school and everywhere in town need to get redone, we pay for the big installation. So they're literally savings banks. The fire truck is a savings bank. The property one is a savings bank. The only one that's different that does get invested, to your point, Stephanie, is the OPEB fund, other post-employment benefits, which is really healthcare, public retiree healthcare. That gets invested. We've made the choice to invest with the state PRIT system, which has performed very well, and we just got an update. What was it, Carrie, last week? We had a meeting. You know, the state officials came in and gave us an update on where things are at. But we invest with the state because they do a really good job.
Perfect. Okay. Is a portion of that cash earning any money at all, just to try to offset what we're feeling with the inflation effect?
I don't know. No, Carrie?
Not really.
You want to
Pure
just?
cash.
Until next, very small amount.
Okay.
We use the investment, sorry,
Yep. You read my.
I know. That was preschool.
See, he kind of works for us, but he doesn't.
So Carrie Bertoni, Treasurer Collector, through you with the chair. So the stabilization funds are held at Bartholomew. They're an investment firm for government banking. There is, you know, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but there are strict rules on what they can invest in and cannot. So like Jamie has said, it is cash. It's earning very, very little interest. It's so that we can get the fund. We need cash flow and all that. But OPEB is a little different. They come in twice a year, and they go through what they're investing in, their rebalancing that they do. So there, I can share that at another meeting. I can actually bring their.
That's on the, you'll hear me in a little while.
Okay, yeah, so I'll provide that information in their report, and it'll
love to
show.
see that.
So
Thank you
that's a
very
great
much.
question, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions? Nice first questions, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Future agenda items. I'll start, I have one, two. I'd like to have, we've never had the assessors here, that I can remember. I'd like to have somebody come in and explain to us, and in the chance that someone's listening, how they, at what point are they triggered to go visit a house,
Yep.
building permit, whatever, how they come up with the number, and then tie it into the financial side, because invariably, unless I'm wrong, the first two tax bills of the year are lower than the second two, because we set the rate in December, correct?
That's correct.
But it's not really, the second two are higher because they're making up for the first two.
Correct.
So, I'd like someone to add some clarity to that at some point.
We will invite the Board of Assessors and the Principal Assessor, Kevin, in, and I have no doubt that he will be more than enjoyed by giving people an overview of assessing. You can go as deep down as you want.
Well, you know,
And I'm serious. You know, I think typically it's been hard, you know, even at a council hearing, right? You have the tax rate hearing that you're referencing in December. And there's only so much time to really dive that deep into assessing, so I think it's a great idea.
Well, like I'm
No, it's a
curious
great
how a building in Forge Park that's empty,
Yeah,
how do they come up with a number for that? I know there's something to do with the income of the building and that kind of stuff, but there's big buildings sitting there, and I don't think, I'm suspecting they're not paying the same rate that I am, you know, on my man's. So,
I think they are.
The same rate.
They are paying the same rate.
yeah, but what's the value, how's the value of the building determined? If it's occupied, it's one value, I think. If it's not occupied, there's a different value. There's some.
Not as much as you'd think.
Okay, well,
People tell me all the time, they go, oh my gosh, a business is gonna move out of town. What are we gonna do? The property taxes are gonna plummet. They don't. The value of the building is still the value of the building. The wood that's built out of, the metal, the materials, the asphalt, dirt, whatever the characteristics are. It's largely, George, part art and part science.
and maybe
But,
we can,
but Kevin's incredible, and we all know that Kevin absolutely loves what he does. And so the Board of Assessors are also elected, for those that don't know, so we'll have him in October. I think it's a great idea.
and the only other one that I'd like to chat with is the school committee.
Okay,
Yeah, you knew that was coming.
I did. I didn't, but I guessed it.
I mean, we've gone from 6,400 students to 4,700 in not a long time, less than 10 years, I think. And so the enrollment is doing this, but the budget is doing that. And I would just like, you know, what are the unfunded mandates, et cetera?
Yep. I think they
And I-
came
and
to
I-
a finance committee meeting a couple years ago. Is that right? Yeah, they did. So we'll talk to the superintendent and see if
Well,
there's a date.
There's a new sheriff in town over
Is
there
it-
too, so we'll see.
They'll bring the entourage, I'm sure. We'll try to find a date in the next few months to have them come in, George.
Anyone else have anybody they'd like to bring in for grilling?
You can't grill Kevin and the assessors. They're our revenue stream. So we'd have to be nice, and we'll bring cookies and milk too.
The only other thing is the scheduling of these meetings.
Sure.
We talked about it briefly before. I would like to get to the point where we have a time and a day or something certain and a time. Not like today at 6 o'clock, the last one was 6:30. I don't, but most of these people like work. And it's tough to, and have kids and trying to schedule around, well, we might meet then. You know, the council meets every other Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Planning board, Mondays at 7. Us, well, we'll be sometime, and I'd like it to be a little firmer.
We do have a schedule. This one was unique tonight because the council meeting got
I
postponed from
understand,
last
but
week
even
this week.
last year, Jamie, the schedule got pushed around.
It did?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, you know, at least give them some opportunity to make plans. I mean, one guy, his train doesn't come in until 6:45.
Mhm.
He's dead for a 6 o'clock meeting,
Right.
so.
What time do you want to do them at? 7?
7 guys?
Like seven,
Yeah, as long as, I could come at 8 o'clock in the morning. They can't, you know? I just have to say that I'm the new thorn between the two roses here, so.
I feel like he was rehearsing that one, like, you know, like.
Think about it all day.
Yeah. Through Mr. Chair, so that's fine, 7 o'clock. We will send out to, because there's another, a ninth member being likely appointed tonight at the council meeting. So we'll send the schedules to the new folks, reiterate the dates. In December, usually we do the calendar for next year. We'll do the meetings at 7. I just want to note that an email will be going out from Alicia to everybody. And it's okay if we do it through Zoom, but we have to have another meeting in all likelihood in the next 2 weeks for a one-vote recommendation. And so that should be a quick meeting, but if everybody's amenable to Zoom, we can even do it during the day for a half hour really quickly during Zoom. I don't expect it to be a very long meeting at all.
Okay. Anything else, anyone? Motion to adjourn from someone?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Roll call,
Roll
Stephanie?
call.
Aye.
Nicole is aye.
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 Dave?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And Jenna?
Aye.